What's going on, guys? Welcome back to another video, and today we have What Culture Star Wars again, and this video is Star Wars Rogue One, 10 ways it changed A New Hope. So I remember when A New Hope came out, a lot of people did have issues with the fact that it messed up some of the storylines that were kind of talked about in episode 4. So in this video, they're going to be covering 10 different ways that kind of changed A New Hope after Rogue One's release. But the question is, were they good changes? Were they bad changes? I guess we're going to find out in this video, and we'll see if we already knew them. So let me know in the comments below if you knew any of these when we go over them. Oh, also, if you see any videos like this you want to see me react to, let me know in the comments below, because if I use your suggestion, I will give you a shout out in that video. Now, with that said, guys, let us jump in.
Changed A New Hope. Number 10. The boarding of the Tantive 4. Most obviously, the iconic opening scene that kicked off the Star Wars saga nearly 50 years ago takes on a whole new meaning after Rogue One, given how the events of this movie had literally just taken place. Probably just a few hours to a day at most before this scene, Jyn Erso and co had just given their lives in a successful effort to steal and transmit the Death Star plans, which were now in the custody of Princess Leia. As a result, the entire scene is now even more urgent than it already was. Leia's cover story as well of being on a diplomatic mission sounds even more like a last-minute lie, as she obviously did not have much time to prepare for Darth Vader's arrival. Speaking of Vader as well, it appears that he is far angrier in this scene than previously thought. Now, he does come off as more reserved in comparison to the slaughter that he committed in the final minutes of Rogue One, but that makes sense, as he appears to have gotten most of his initial anger out of his system. In addition, 3PO's line of, "There'll be no escape for the princess this time," suddenly fits in with everything much better, considering we now know he was referring to what had transpired only several hours beforehand. Number 9, the Empire's...
I always thought that was like the biggest thing for me too, was the fact that like in A New Hope, it kind of felt like Vader didn't know for certain what's going on, right? And then with Rogue One, we know that Vader knows for a fact that ship is the one that that they were on. So it's like I think it's one of those things where you can kind of let that one go, but I understand if people were mad about that.
Competence. One of the most glaring literal plot holes that bothered Star Wars fans for decades is how the Empire, the ultimate military force in the galaxy, could allow such a potentially devastating flaw in their supposedly all-powerful superweapon. Rogue One, of course, filled us in on that, as it turned out that the flaw in the Death Star was not naive oversight on the part of the Empire, but rather sabotage of the main reactor by Galen Erso, a traitor with the Empire's trust. So it was not incompetence on the part of the Empire, it was someone on the inside setting them up to fail right under their noses. Now they come off as a much more believable threat in regards to battle strategy given this information. Also, as an added bonus, the Empire's decision to build a second Death Star in Return of the Jedi suddenly makes a lot more sense, since they knew that the only reason the first one failed was because of the aforementioned sabotage. Number 8, Darth Vader.
Yeah, that's like one of the changes I think that you can't get mad about. Like, I think that was a very smart and clever way for them to do that. They instantly get rid of the massive, like, plot hole that has been, well, legit the hole inside the Death Star. They get rid of that with that whole story plot. And honestly, I think that is good. Like, if you can complain about any of these other changes they mentioned, this is the one you cannot complain about. That is actually, like, the best thing that they could have done for that whole situation. So, I think that's cool. I'm cool with that one.
Vader's behavior and musings. Despite his relatively restrained nature in the opening scene, Darth Vader still appears to be very high-strung throughout the duration of A New Hope. Granted, he's not going on an absolute madman rampage like he did at the end of Rogue One, as again, that likely served as a way for him to vent, but he still has absolutely no problem choking a rebel to death with minimal effort. While it's not always overt, it now very much seems that Vader is almost running on an adrenaline high after the events of Rogue One. This is apparent by the aforementioned choking of a man to death during the interrogation, his merciless killing of Obi-Wan, which was preceded by self-indulgent gloating, and his haste in taking to his fighter to put a stop to the assault on the Death Star himself. At this point, Vader is absolutely furious that the Rebel Alliance got the best of him and managed to escape with the plans in the first place, and as such is determined to not let such a defeat befall him again. In addition, certain quotes and reflections the Sith Lord has throughout the film now seem to feel much more at home. Most notably, his line similar to that of C-3PO's, in which he proclaims to an Imperial officer that there'll be no one to stop us this time. We now know that he was referring to what had just taken place on Scarif. Number 7.
I think that's okay.
R2-D2's secrecy.
That one's
Throughout
okay.
the early goings of A New Hope,
cool with that.
R2-D2 is something of a painfully stubborn little spy, not sharing his mission of delivering the Death Star plans with even his closest companion, 3PO. In addition, he tricks Luke into turning off his projector to keep him from seeing Leia's message, as well as sneaking off in the middle of the night to search for Obi-Wan and complete his objective. All of this, of course, is much to the frustration of 3PO and Luke. However, given the events of Rogue One, R2's behavior now feels much more logical, especially from his perspective. Given the countless number of rebels who had just died in the effort to steal these plans, plus the ones who were slaughtered like fish in a barrel by Darth Vader while trying to get them to Leia, it's understandable that he would rather nobody know that he was now their custodian. And that means nobody. Rewatching A New Hope with this in mind makes R2's behavior come off as smart strategy, as opposed to just obnoxious stubbornness. Number 6, Tarkin's arrogance in not evacuating. Another point.
Okay, I'll give that one a pass. I think that's fine. That's fine. I think it's one of those ones like you don't necessarily have to think a lot about, but like if you want to come from that perspective, I agree with it. That's cool.
Point of criticism for A New Hope has been Grand Moff Tarkin's brash arrogance during the assault on the Death Star. Many have deemed this as foolish overconfidence, but Rogue One told us that this was far from the truth. Was he overconfident? Well, arguably, but it was far from foolish. In fact, had it not been for Galen Erso's actions, he would have been absolutely justified in his refusal to evacuate the base. As stated before, the Death Star's only weakness at this point was a result of an inside job, something Tarkin was completely unaware of and could not have planned for. The only two Imperial officers who knew of the sabotage were Galen himself and Director Krennic, both of whom perished during the events of Rogue One before the information could get back to Tarkin himself. Moreover, Tarkin's attitude towards the Death Star in Rogue One tells us a lot as well. The sheer amount of pride that the Grand Moff had, which we only had gotten a glimpse of in A New Hope while he made an example of Alderaan, for instance, was now on display in full force. The Death Star was so destructive that Tarkin had both Jedha and Scarif fired upon on the station's weakest setting, and yet it still caused cataclysmic devastation. The Death Star created something of a god complex for Tarkin, and he refused to entertain the idea that it could be destroyed. And given what we saw in Rogue One, who can honestly blame him? Number 5,
yeah.
The Rebels' will to fight.
That's a good one.
Throughout their appearance in A New Hope, the Rebel Alliance seems willing to take the fight directly to the Empire, no matter what the cost. However, the first two acts of Rogue One tell a very different story. In fact, many were disillusioned with the cause, disgusted with themselves and some of the heinous orders that they'd had to carry out, and were beginning to feel the apparent hopelessness of fighting the Empire. In short, they were just about ready to give up. And it was the sacrifice of Rogue One that caused their change of heart. The Rebels' original motivation of simply wanting to restore freedom to the galaxy is all well and good. However, now knowing that they were doing what they did to honor those who gave their lives just to give them a fighting chance makes their drive and determination mean so much more. Which brings us nicely to number 4, the size of the Death Star assault team. Continuing from the last point, the Rebels having such a small team for the famous assault on the Death Star now seems much more fitting, given the fact that a sizable portion of their forces had just been wiped out during the Battle of Scarif. During said battle, we see an absolute fleet of X and Y wings, most of which would be destroyed while Rogue One fought below to retrieve the Death Star plans. So when it came time to attack the Death Star directly, 31-man fighters were all that the rebellion had left to spare for the battle that would decide the very fate of them and their cause. Worse yet, all but 3 ships, the Millennium Falcon excluded, would meet their bitter end over the course of this assault. The attack on the Death Star truly was an all-or-nothing gamble for the Rebels, sending what small amount of men they had left in a last-ditch effort to get the job done. The job not being merely win the war against the Empire, but simply to survive another day. Number 3, the Stormtroopers' inability to hit targets. For years, the Stormtroopers' apparent ineptitude when it came to firefights had been the subject of mockery and ridicule amongst fans. This, of course, goes all the way back to A New Hope, in which the Imperial soldiers were completely unable to hit the film's protagonists with their blasters, despite them having perfectly clear shots throughout the movie and our heroes being sitting ducks at times. So, what gives? Well, in Rogue One, despite his blindness, Donnie Yen's character is able to not only effectively dodge each blast that came his way, but walk through a chaotic battlefield battlefield without so much as being grazed, all the while proclaiming, "I am one with the Force, and the Force is with me." He is only finally hit and killed after making it across the firefight unscathed and flipping the switch that would help make the rebels' mission a success. His dying words are, "I fulfilled my destiny." Provided this was the intention, this information kinda changes everything. This tells us that when the Force is involved, not even the most highly trained soldiers in the galaxy can keep something from their purpose. So how did Luke Skywalker and company manage to remain unshot for so long? Well, it's because they hadn't fulfilled their destiny yet, and the Force was going to help make sure they did. Number 2.
I guess I'd understand if you want to come from that spot. I always just kind of assumed it was because they had direct orders not to actually kill them, but to kind of direct them to a certain area, specifically where Vader is. And in the scene with Chirrut there, I just feel like that was just one of those things where there's a battle going on. There's a lot of different enemies everywhere. People aren't necessarily shooting the guy who's just walking. You know what I mean? They're trying to shoot the guys who are shooting them. So I think there's just a battle haze to it, and everyone's just kind of busy shooting each other. They're not really paying attention to the guy who's just walking, nonchalant, just kind of doing his own thing. So I guess I could understand the argument. I don't know if I necessarily think it was a change they meant to make, but I mean, hey, it could be.
The destruction of the Death Star. Because of the information given to us in Rogue One, the ultimate destruction of the original Death Star in A New Hope retroactively becomes one of the most emotional moments in all of Star Wars, if it wasn't already. Rogue One gave the mission everything, up to and including their lives, just for a chance. A chance and nothing more. A chance that maybe what they did could help the rebellion succeed. They clung to the last bit of hope there was all the way to the bitter end, just to buy a little more time for everyone else, and it paid off. It was because of the bravery and selfishness of Rogue One that Luke Skywalker was even given the chance to go on his iconic mission. So, the Death Star's destruction was not only Luke's moment of triumph, but also, and arguably more so in a way, that of Rogue One. The last will and testament of those previously unsung heroes was what made the Rebellion's finest hour a possibility. The Force truly was with Rogue One, and you can bet that somewhere they were smiling when the Empire's ultimate weapon, the one they had given their lives to stop, went up in flames. Number 1, the title. When the original Star Wars film was rebranded as A New Hope 4 years after its initial release, everyone assumed that this was referring to Luke Skywalker. And how could they not, given the content of the film? However, after Rogue One, the title takes on a whole other meaning. Throughout Rogue One, we are constantly reminded that rebellions are built on hope. They drive this point to the viewer over and over again. The team do what they do in the name of hope, and this culminates in Leia's last line that closes the film, in which she receives the stolen Death Star plans. When the rebel who gave her the transmission asks what had been delivered, she replies simply with the word hope. The hope that one day the sacrifices made to steal those plans would be worth it. Well, that day would come sooner than they may have thought, as the assault on the Death Star would come shortly after the events of Rogue One concluded. Which begs the question, was this New Hope really Luke, or was it what came of Rogue One's first and last stand? Well, why can't it be both? So that's our list. I want to know what you guys think down in the
that's what I would say. I would say, yeah, it's both. I always assumed it was Luke, but, when you put it that way, yeah, hope is everything. A New Hope is everything to take down the Empire. So all the different elements that go into it, being from Luke to him running into our dashing hero, which would be Han. Han reluctantly coming back to help Luke in the end. It's all about hope, and yeah, it worked. So what did you guys think about this video? Did you like it? Did you not like it? Did you know all this stuff? Do you agree with a lot of this stuff, or do you disagree? Let me know in the comments below. If you guys have any cool ideas for future videos like this, you see any videos you want to see me react to, let me know in the comments below, because if I use your suggestion, I will give you a shout out in that video. But thanks again for watching, and I'll catch you next one. Peace.